I didn't kill her physically, but in the back of my mind, she died.
Word hit the block fast. 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez's body found decomposed inside David's Tesla had everyone shook. At first, nobody believed it, but now the feds just dropped new evidence that actually clears David in this homicide case. And the name they just revealed? It's about to flip everything you thought you knew about this story. When the streets started buzzing and the receipts came in, most people were too busy posting on socials to catch the real story. The evidence? It's telling a completely different tale than what went viral on your timeline. Let's rewind to September 8, 2025, when this whole mess kicked off. Workers at Hollywood Tow on North Mansfield Avenue noticed a nasty stench coming from a black 2023 Tesla Model 3 that had just been towed in a few days prior. This whip had been abandoned in the Hollywood Hills for almost 3 weeks, maybe even a month, just chilling on public streets in one of LA's priciest neighborhoods, where folks normally don't let cars sit like that. When the LAPD rolled up around 12:30 p.m. and popped open the front trunk, the frunk for Tesla owners, they found it. Severely decomposed human remains wrapped in a black plastic bag weighing about 71 pounds. Shorty's condition was so horrific that it took nearly 9 full days until September 17, 2025, for authorities to officially confirm her identity. They verified it through dental records, DNA testing, and a distinctive SH tattoo etched on her right index finger. This is where the story takes a sharp turn, and where paying attention to the facts becomes absolutely crucial. The Tesla was unquestionably registered to David, but here's the kicker. The 20-year-old artist was deep into his We World tour at the exact time the body was discovered.
A situation that you actually caught us up on last week involving the pop singer David and Celeste Rivas, who's this 17-year-old, and her body was discovered, if memory serves, in the trunk of a Tesla that was found in a rental car lot in California.
Yeah, and even more tragic, she was 15 now, and when she went missing, she was only 13 years old.
He was performing across North America, hitting city after city, packed arenas, and documented appearances that provided a completely verifiable timeline proving where he was. Her ex-boyfriend revealed that Shorty was struggling with a troubled home life, showing us that she was a young girl facing intense challenges far deeper than a single relationship or situation. Meanwhile, the internet had already made its judgment, matching tattoos, photos together, sus as hell, a leaked song allegedly titled Celeste, and everyone was ready to lock someone up. But here's the truth. What law enforcement actually said tells a different story, and what they didn't say is even more important. LAPD Captain Scott M. Williams confirmed that Celeste Rivas Hernandez died, and that someone had placed her body in the front trunk of David Burke's Tesla. But here's the crucial part. Captain Williams emphasized that it remains unclear whether there is any criminal culpability beyond the act of concealing the body. This is the key detail that got lost in all the viral speculation and social media chaos. The timeline, the documented appearances, and the verifiable evidence all shift the narrative, proving that the streets jumped to conclusions before law enforcement could lay out the facts. Real talk, after weeks of digging into this case, David has never been named as a suspect. He's never been arrested and has been fully cooperating with the authorities from day one. Sources close to him confirmed to multiple news outlets that David has been kept in the loop about everything, and even while he's still out on his We World tour, he's been giving investigators full access and staying transparent with the process. But here's the real bombshell. Some of the most important info came straight from forensic experts breaking down the case. Dr. Amy Santoro, a forensic scientist and former CSI with a PhD in her field, publicly stated that investigators believe Celeste's death may have been caused by a drug overdose. Preliminary autopsy findings reportedly showed no signs of trauma, which is massive when you think about it. Santoro explained that if toxicology confirms this theory, David likely wouldn't face homicide charges because the focus would shift away from intentional foul play entirely. Think about what that really means. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office deferred the official cause and manner of death, noting that there was no pregnancy and that the severe decomposition made it impossible to immediately determine how she passed. The situation, therefore, is far more complicated than what the internet blew up into a frenzy over. Every new piece of evidence peels back another layer of the story, showing that the headlines, the leaks, and the viral posts barely scratched the surface of what really went down. Without an official homicide classification, This case exists in a major legal gray area, completely shaking the whole murder narrative that blew up on social media. Criminal defense attorney Alexandra Kazarian made it crystal clear in a News Nation interview. She straight up said there's no evidence against David for any crime, despite all the circumstantial stuff like the Tesla and the alleged relationship. She pointed out that LAPD has been moving cautiously, holding back key details because there simply isn't enough verified information to make any claims. Now let's talk about the tea that everyone's been spilling. The rumors about David and Celeste's relationship. Sure, her mom told TMZ that Celeste mentioned dating someone named David. Sure, they allegedly shared a tattoo. And yeah, there were photos and Discord messages floating online. But here's what most people completely miss while gossiping. David's manager, Josh Marshall, the guy leasing the Hollywood Hills property where David would sometimes crash, said he had zero knowledge of anything happening and worked mostly remotely with minimal interaction with clients. The timeline itself blows holes in the conspiracy theories. No cap, the Tesla had been sitting abandoned in Hollywood Hills for roughly 3 weeks before it got towed around September 3rd, 2025. Meanwhile, David was fully on tour, documented performing in multiple cities with public appearances that created a rock-solid timeline. Neighbors even reported seeing the car parked there as early as mid-August, long before anyone discovered what was actually going on. And the decomposition? Experts estimate Celeste's remains had been there for at least 2 to 4 weeks when they were found, showing she had been deceased for a minute before the case even blew up online. The evidence paints a picture that's far more complex than social media posts made it seem. Timelines, documented appearances, and verifiable facts all make it clear that jumping to conclusions would be a mistake. This detail becomes massive when you think about where David was during all this and who else could have had access to his whip. The investigation dug deeper, and the evidence started stacking up fast. As September 2025 rolled on, what became crystal clear wasn't David's guilt, like social media had everyone pressed to believe, but the sheer complexity of the case. You've got a troubled teenager, a vehicle that multiple people could access, and a cause of death that forensic experts were still struggling to pinpoint. On September 17, 2025, LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division rolled up on the Hollywood Hills rental on the 1300 block of Daney Place with a search warrant. The property had been leased by David's manager, Josh Marshall, for about $20,000 per month since February 2024. Detectives were checking for blood evidence, scanning drains for traces, and seizing electronics like laptops for forensic analysis. Every angle was being covered. Here's where it gets wild, fam. Just days after the raid, around September 24th to 25th, the lease was abruptly terminated, and the whole spot got cleared out. The homeowner, Mladen Trifunovic, confirmed that Marshall reached out saying they were breaking the lease and would be out by week's end. He made it clear, though, that when the lease was signed back in February 2024, everything was standard. No issues, no red flags, just a normal rental arrangement. This sudden exit only blew up the internet even more, with folks quick to spin it as proof that somebody was hiding something. But let's keep it real and consider another side. When your client's spot gets raided in connection with a high-profile death investigation and the media circus is literally camped outside your door, staying put becomes next to impossible, innocent or not. The property had external security cameras, which could have potentially held key evidence, though the homeowner made it clear he couldn't access the footage without either tenant permission or a warrant. Every angle, every device, every detail matters in a case like this. Now let's break down what forensic science can actually tell us and what it can't, because that's where a lot of people get tripped up. Understanding the limits of forensic evidence is crucial. It's not magic. Decomposition, time gaps, contamination, and limited samples all factor into what investigators can reliably conclude. The advanced decomposition of Celeste's remains, her body weight dropping to around 71 pounds due to decay, made the investigation extremely complicated. Forensic expert Dr. Amy Santoro explained that investigators suspect a drug overdose based on autopsy findings showing no signs of trauma. If this theory holds, it completely shifts the narrative from potential murder to a tragic accidental death or misadventure. To recap the situation, which we broke down last week, pop singer David and 17-year-old Celeste Rivas were at the center of headlines after her body was discovered in the front trunk of a Tesla, which had been towed to a rental car lot in California. But here's the heartbreaking part. When Celeste went missing back in April 2024, she was only 13 years old. The absence of trauma is a major detail, fam. In violent homicide cases, bodies typically show clear evidence of what caused the death, from bruising to lacerations. but none of that was present here. This detail alone makes the case far more complex than the rush-to-judgment stories that went viral online, forcing investigators to dig deeper and weigh every possibility before making conclusions. Strangulation leaves marks on the neck. Blunt force trauma causes fractures. Stabbing or shooting leaves distinct wounds. The absence of all these signs, combined with the fact that the cause of death is still deferred pending toxicology results.
Background reports have emerged that D4 paused his ongoing tour after a woman's body, later identified as a 15-year-old, was found inside a Tesla registered to his name. TMZ reported that the victim and the singer shared the same tattoo, Shush, on the same finger.
He was obsessed with the victim, wrote songs about her, had matching tattoos and tons of
Points to a scenario very different from the violent murder that everyone online assumed had happened. Now let's really consider Celeste's background because it's critical to understanding what might have occurred. She had a documented history of running away, with sheriff's deputies called to her family's home 11 times in just 13 months for disturbances and minor offenses. Community members in Lake Elsinore reported that she ran away at least 3 times in 2024, often leaving notes behind or being spotted near vehicles. Her ex-boyfriend also painted a picture of intense family tensions, showing that she was growing up in a troubled home environment. This pattern of behavior is key to understanding alternative scenarios. No cap, a teenager repeatedly navigating difficult home circumstances might seek refuge with different people, make risky decisions, or find themselves in dangerous situations involving drugs or other hazards, all without any single individual being responsible for a premeditated murder. The evidence, the timelines, and the forensic findings all suggest that what happened could have been a tragic accident or misadventure, rather than the narrative of intentional foul play that exploded online. You feel me? Private investigator reports indicated that back in 2024, relatives supposedly emailed David's management about Celeste's disappearance, and she returned home the very next day, hinting that some kind of intervention might have gone down. But here's the catch. Josh Marshall, David's manager, denied ever receiving any emails. This highlights just how tricky it gets separating verified facts from speculation and pure hearsay in cases like this. Meanwhile, online chatter hit peak levels, with fans and critics dissecting David's music as if every lyric was evidence. Take his song Romantic Homicide, with lines like, "In the back of my mind, you die and I didn't even cry." No, not a single tear. People immediately ran with it like it was some kind of confession. But as David himself clarified in a Genius interview, lyrics are art, not a real-time diary or a legal admission. The frenzy online shows just how fast rumor and social media narratives can hijack a story, turning songs, tattoos, and fleeting photos into supposed proof, even when the actual evidence tells a far more nuanced and complicated tale. The song actually dropped back in July 2022, long before Celeste went missing. Claims that it coincided with her birthday were thoroughly debunked. Yet the rumor kept circulating online like gospel, used as evidence by social media sleuths. Despite the facts, the professional fallout hit David hard. He canceled the rest of his tour dates, including major shows in Seattle, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Big-name brands like Crocs and Hollister pulled their collaborations, and streaming platforms deprioritized his music. Even with all the chaos, a few voices stepped up in his defense. Streamers Jason Lewine and Lewig broke down the situation, analyzing timelines, tour evidence, and media narratives to challenge the rush-to-judgment mindset online. Their commentary highlighted how social media can twist stories, turning rumors into perceived truths, while the verified facts paint a much different picture of events and consequences. Fellow streamer Rain later backed Jason's initial stance, saying it's understandable to have your homies' backs before hard evidence drops. But he stressed that continuing support after the facts emerge could be problematic. Meanwhile, the Tesla itself became a huge focal point in the investigation. These cars aren't just luxury rides, they're packed with Sentry Mode cameras and detailed data logs. Former TV personalities and academics pointed out that if David were actually responsible, it would be unbelievably reckless to commit a crime in a vehicle that records nearly everything. As late September and October 2025 rolled in, a clearer picture began to emerge, one that completely contradicted the premeditated murder narrative that had taken over social media. The evidence increasingly suggested a tragic scenario involving a vulnerable teenager, substance use, and a string of unfortunate circumstances. While the details are certainly suspicious, they don't necessarily point to the criminal homicide so many assumed had happened. Forensic scientist Dr. Amy Santoro's repeated statements that investigators believe Celeste may have died from a drug overdose are perhaps the most significant development in understanding this case. This insight reframes the entire situation, highlighting a story far more complex and far more tragic than the headlines suggested. In multiple social media posts from early October 2025, Dr. Amy Santoro broke it down clearly. If toxicology confirms a drug overdose as the cause of death,
But was she still really missing without a trace all that time? The other day, TMZ acquired some video of Celeste in her parents' backyard, and it was dated September 8th, 2024. That date is so significant for a couple of reasons. First off, it's 5 months after she supposedly disappeared for the last time. And what's more sad is that it is one day after her 14th birthday.
David would likely avoid any homicide charges entirely. This is because Celeste's death might have resulted from self-inflicted or accidental circumstances tied to her documented risky behaviors. This theory aligns with several key facts. Real talk. The preliminary autopsy showed no signs of trauma. Celeste had a history of running away and seeking refuge in different places, and determining a cause of death in severely decomposed remains is extremely complex. Now let's talk about the whip itself, fam. Multiple sources confirmed that David owned several vehicles, and this Tesla was accessible to multiple people. The car had been sitting abandoned for weeks, during which time David was verifiably on tour, performing in cities all across North America. The timeline of decomposition suggested that Celeste had been deceased for several weeks before the body was discovered, weeks that overlapped entirely with David's documented absences from Los Angeles. All these facts together paint a picture that challenges the viral assumptions, showing the case is far more complicated than what the headlines made it seem. This raises some serious questions, no cap. If David wasn't physically present when Celeste died, and if her death was the result of a drug overdose rather than violence, what exactly is the scope of any potential culpability? Could it be that she died somewhere David had stayed and others, maybe trying to avoid legal scrutiny, placed her body in his Tesla, knowing he was away on tour? Or is it possible she used the vehicle herself, or with some people she was rolling with, and tragedy struck without David ever knowing? LAPD Captain Scott M. Williams' careful statement starts making a lot more sense in this context. Someone placed her body in the front trunk of David's Tesla, but it remains unclear whether there's any criminal culpability beyond the act of concealing the body. And that distinction is huge. Concealing a body is a crime, sure, but it's fundamentally different from causing the death itself. You feel me? Then there's this wild timing coincidence. Surveillance footage captured Celeste in her parents' backyard on September 8, 2024, exactly 1 year before her body was discovered. This footage came 5 months after she was supposedly missing for the last time, revealing that her disappearances were sporadic, her movements more fluid, and her situation far more complicated than initially understood. These details paint a stark picture of a teenager in crisis, cycling through disappearances and returns, living in circumstances that constantly drew law enforcement attention. The investigation also uncovered complexities in Celeste's family situation. Early reports suggested her parents might have been undocumented immigrants who had left the country, but exclusive records obtained by News Nation confirm both parents were legally in the U.S., with social security numbers dating back to 2001. A former neighbor who lived in public housing with the family from 2019 to 2020 recalled overhearing occasional arguments about custody of the children, though there was no indication of divorce. What emerges is a portrait of a troubled family system, a young girl seeking escape, and a tragic outcome that likely resulted from the cumulative weight of these circumstances rather than any single villainous act. This doesn't lessen the heartbreak. If anything, it makes it even more devastating. The legal implications of the drug overdose theory are huge, fam. Without a homicide classification, prosecutors would face major hurdles bringing murder charges against anyone. Former prosecutors noted that while arrests are technically possible even without a precise cause of death, the lack of evidence pointing to foul play makes it extremely difficult to proceed. The concealment of the body itself could trigger charges, but determining who was responsible, especially when multiple people may have had access to the Tesla, creates its own set of challenges. David has consistently maintained through his representatives that he had no knowledge of any wrongdoing and has fully cooperated with authorities. The online speculation around grooming, given Celeste's age, is a separate issue that has fueled even more conversation. Alleged Discord messages between a user named Celeste and David dating back to 2022 raised questions about the nature and timeline of their connection. However, authorities haven't verified the authenticity of these messages or filed any charges related to statutory rape or exploitation. California's statutory rape laws would apply if a sexual relationship occurred between David, age 20, and Celeste, age 13 to 15 during the relevant period. But proving that beyond screenshots and social media speculation would require solid evidence. And as of late October 2025, no such charges had been filed. So what does this mean for David's future, fam? The absence of criminal charges doesn't erase the professional fallout he suffered. His tour remains canceled, brand partnerships dissolved, and his reputation has taken a massive hit. Even if he's eventually cleared of all criminal wrongdoing, the association with this tragedy will likely follow him throughout his career. No cap. But here's what we've got to grapple with as a society: the rush to judgment, the reliance on circumstantial evidence, the power of social media speculation, and our own tendency to want clear villains in stories that are anything but simple. The lesson here goes beyond this single tragedy. Real talk. In an era of instant communication and social media justice, we have to resist the urge to convict someone based on circumstantial connections and suspicious coincidences. The American legal system, flawed as it is, and despite its historical injustices, operates on the principle of innocent until proven guilty. That exists precisely because human judgment is fallible, and circumstantial evidence can easily mislead. When we abandon that principle in the court of public opinion, we risk destroying lives based on incomplete information and speculative narratives. The coroner's report remains the key to understanding what truly happened. Until toxicology results are finalized and analyzed, much of what's been presented as fact is still conjecture. The difference between a tragic accidental death and a calculated murder isn't just semantics. It's the difference between seeing this as a systemic failure impacting a vulnerable youth and framing it as the work of a single malicious actor. If you want to follow more deep dives like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Click on one of the cards on your screen to check out more videos breaking down the stories behind the headlines.